Okay, so there's been a lot of talk in the Canadian media this week on a very provocative statement made by a couple of our political leaders. And the statement was, oil is dead. Okay, so they made this statement. I think that they made it to try and get some relevancy rather than trying to necessarily solve an actual problem. But let's unpack this statement, because there's going to be people that are going to argue this, and if you're one of them, let's actually talk about this. So the statement, oil is dead, it implies that it is like a product that's not being used anymore. Let's say similar to a horse and buggy as a primary means of transportation around the world, right? You could maybe make an argument that the horse and buggy as a primary mode of transportation around the world is dead. Okay, we don't see a lot of people using that. And there are something that are called substitute goods for that mode of transportation. So let's unpack a concept called a substitute good. Now, a substitute good in economics or consumer theory is a product or a service that consumer sees as the same or similar to another product. So if you're going to say oil is dead, then you should be able to point to the substitute good for oil. So what is oil used for? What would we have a substitute good for that? Well, obviously it's used to create energy. It heats many people's homes around the world. It propels us in vehicles, cars, planes, and on. Agricultural equipment, it's used to create our foods, it's used in fertilizers, it's used in pharmaceuticals, it's used to transport the stuff that we eat, it's used to make clothing, protective equipment, the phone that I'm recording this on. There are so many different uses for oil that you would actually have to unpack the substitute goods for each of those things to make a pronouncement that oil is dead, that there's a substitute good for each and every one of those things. And what you would find, I could do that, it would be like a many-hour video, so I won't, is that there really, right now, there's not a lot of substitute goods for petroleum products. There just isn't. Now, that's not saying that we shouldn't be looking for substitute goods, or that we shouldn't be addressing the question of climate change. But to make the statement that oil is dead suggests that we have readily available replacements for oil and all of its derivative products and benefits. And that's just factually incorrect. That is factually incorrect. There's even the most ardent, off-the-grid environmentalist would argue that the global economy, that is oil demand, it might have a bit of a blip right now because of coronavirus, but oil demand has been increasing. And if we have a V-shaped economic recovery, oil demand will continue to increase. And why? Because we don't have a substitute good for oil. So in and of itself, you can't argue that oil is dead, because it's clearly being used around the world every day for things that the people who say oil is dead use every day, that they're not employing substitute goods for, okay? So then let's talk about, Michelle, maybe we should make oil dead. Okay, well, let's, for the sake of argument, go down this path. If you wanted to make oil dead, you would have to make it, for the purposes of climate change, you'd have to show that the substitute good that you're working towards would have a net positive environmental impact. We really don't have yet technology that can replace the amount of energy that a carbon molecule puts out in a lot of different instances. So we need research, right? Now, in Canada, what industry actually spends a lot of money on research for clean technology or research into substitute goods? It's the oil and gas sector. In fact, if you scroll through my video feed here, you can see me watching asking this question to the Economic Development Minister of Canada, asking her if she knew how much the oil and gas industry contributed in terms of raw percentage to the clean tech industry in Canada. And it's about 75%. I encourage you to watch that video. So if we don't have a substitute good, but we need to develop one for oil, and the industry that extracts it is spending a lot on clean tech and other things, you still can't argue that oil is dead. You just can't. So if we're using it and we don't have a substitute good, oh, but wait, you're going to say we do have a substitute good. Okay, you're right. You're right. In some areas, there are, you know, like some people, they do choose to live off the grid, and they have, you know, they install windmills and stuff on their property, or they have very expensive, you know, Tesla cars. Not everybody can afford that. So if you're going to say oil is dead and you point to any of those as substitute goods, you're actually making an argument for inequality, because you're turning a blind eye to the fact that the vast majority of us can't afford those things. So it's not a true substitute good. If you want to argue that we should be removing barriers to equality of opportunity, but then saying that a product that makes life affordable for most people in the context of our global economy is dead, you're making a false argument. You're making an argument for inequality. And again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be addressing the climate change, but you can't start from a position of ignorance that oil is dead, because it's not dead. It just, like, it is how we are, it's what is happening in the global economy right now. So, taking it one step further, you know, I hear a lot of people, and I've been across the country, there's a lot of people who are in a certain age bracket, I'm just going to say this, in Canada, who are, you know, retired. They've worked hard. I congratulate them. They've got wonderful lifestyle, and they're retired on pensions that are invested in what? Products and services that use oil, or are dependent on oil, or they've been in a career all their whole life where they've benefited off of what? An oil-based economy. And then they're saying, well, oil is dead. Oil is dead. Well, what about all the generations behind you? You're saying we want to leave a cleaner generation or cleaner planet for generations behind us. Okay, but oil is not dead. It's still the only thing. There's still no substitute good, and it's still a lot cheaper to buy these other products. So how is your statement solving that problem? You're just making a provocative statement without stating any starting point of reality. It's bananas. Okay? So that's what boggles my mind with this statement. It's like, if we really want to address the question of climate change, if we really want to address the issue of inequality, especially inequality between generations and moving forward, you have to start in the current operating context, which is we use oil in the global economy for virtually everything, and we don't have a substitute good for it. So you have to start there. And for me, the starting point on that is, if we want to talk about substitute goods and research and funding all of this stuff, the starting point should be, how can we use that resource that we all depend upon in the most efficient and environmentally sustainable way possible? So the base starting point for that question should be, in this period of transition, maybe we should source that product from and have a market economy where we reward countries and producers that produce that in the most clean, environmentally sustainable possible way. So around the world, if you were going to use that as a value, where would you buy that product from? Would it be Saudi Arabia, a country that doesn't really have very many environmental standards and runs a cartel and is somewhat dubious, to put it mildly, on its human rights record? Would you buy it from Venezuela, a country that similar boat and is run by a dictator that has similar human rights issues with no environmental standards? Or would you, say, buy it from a country like Canada, which is one of the freest democracies in the world, that has rigorous environmental standards, that it takes years and years to pass environmental review processes, and has requirements for environmental standards and investment into clean tech, and on and on and on? Or would you just shut down our industry in our country, make a pronouncement that oil is dead, continue to benefit economically and financially off of from your privileged position as a retired person? Would you continue to just do that and benefit from an oil-based economy and shut down our industry and all the people in my riding? Like, that's not responsible. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous position. It's bananas. So this is why for years, and prior to entering politics, I worked for a university, and I worked in our sponsored research department where I worked with researchers. We were doing what? We were making energy production cleaner. We were developing clean technology. Why would we not use Canadian energy as a solution to this problem, right? And I'll tell you why. Because it's really easy for these political leaders, who frankly have virtually little relevance across the country, are worried about their political futures, to say something so ignorantly provocative, as opposed to saying, yeah, we're in the middle of an energy, there's no substitute good for oil right now. How do we use Canadian oil to address this in a productive way? As opposed to just shutting down a sector in the country where other countries benefit from. Of course other countries are going to benefit from my community being out of work and Canadian energy shut down. The Saudis, the Venezuelans, and the people who refine energy in our country using those products, because it's impossible for us to get our products to them to do so. It is a shameful display of political ignorance, and it's beyond the pale. And I am so frustrated as a legislator that we can't start from that position of reality, that we can't start from a position of reality, even on something as simple as a carbon tax as a way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Guess what? It's cold here. We have to heat our homes. We have to drive around because we don't have a substitute good for public transit in my riding, because my city council can't figure out how to spend money we gave to them 6 years ago on public transit. That's another rant. It's just, don't buy into somebody. Listen, I'm talking to you, the person in your house, or if you're listening to me and you militantly disagree with me and you're like, we shouldn't have any oil, we shouldn't. Okay, but you can't start by saying oil is dead, because it's not. So we have to start by supporting products that are developed in the most environmentally sustainable way possible, and that is Canadian energy, guys. Come on. Demand is not going to decrease around the country or around the world magically overnight. We don't have a substitute good for this, so we should be using this resource that we have in a structured, proud way to be part of the solution. Oil is dead. Don't buy into it, you guys. Don't do that. Share this video to somebody who needs to hear it. I'm happy to. I'm not even going to say their names. I've been asked for interviews on this topic. I don't want to debate them. You know why? Because I don't want to use my platform and waste my breath on their political stunts when so many people in my riding are out of work because of their ignorance. And the people in my riding, the rig workers, the chemical engineers, the accountants, all of the people that have this brilliant mindset on how to develop something that we need and use in an environmentally sustainable way, that they could be creating receptor capacity for research to develop these substitute goods. They don't care about them, because they're in it to say provocative things for political points, and I am done with that. I'm done debating them because it's not worth my time. It's actually so ignorant. That comment is so profoundly ignorant that it's not even worth debating. It's not even worth debating. Oil is not dead. Everybody uses it. The question is, how do we make it cleaner? How do we develop substitute goods while using the wealth that resource creates to do so? There's a productive discussion. Let's discuss that. But let's get away from the throwaway comments to, tweet something out to bolster lagging fundraising numbers with a very small base of people who have the luxury and the privilege of making statements like that without changing their lives whatsoever. Working hard for you. Have a great day.